My name is Helen Sti. I am 18 years old. I was born and raised in Allah. I attended elementary and junior school in Allah. Then I moved to Saganeti for my high school studies. Then when I became 15 years old in 10th grade, I got caught in Karen while trying to cross the border. They said there won't be any checkpoints, but they made checkpoints that day, so they caught us. I went to a prison in Karen from there. When we got in the first prison in Karen, they moved us from prison to prison on the first day. After they put us on the permanent prison, they separated us all so that we don't communicate with each other. They separated out those who were caught together so that we won't give similar answers when they interrogate us. We were 6 girls together, and they separated us into 2 prison cells. The food they were giving us was really bad. It was really cold and there were mosquitoes. We couldn't sleep at night because of the mosquito bites. We were only allowed to go to the toilet twice a day. The food was terrible. They gave us tea in a used water container. We used empty vessels to pee since we were only allowed outside twice a day. The food they gave us was vegetables filled with water. You would find stones in the lentils they gave us and rarely pasta, but it was not edible. Since we were females, we were relatively treated better than the boys who were across us. For example, we would ask to pee and would be allowed, but not for the boys. They were only allowed to go outside early in the morning and in the evening. Even then they would rush them. The food for them was even worse than what we were getting. They were constantly beaten. We were always locked outside, but we would look through the cracks, the boys getting beat by the security, and shouting and screaming. A week after we were jailed in prison, they started interrogating us. The interrogation was very stressful. They would ask you needless questions such as why did you want to leave the country when you have education in your country? What problems you have to leave your country? You're a traitor. They ask if my parents knew, but you can't tell them because they'd arrest them if I said yes. They ask you very detailed questions regarding how I thought about leaving, why I thought it, what I did afterwards, and so on. I was treated fine because I was underage, but there was one who was a former Sawa conscript. The policewoman called her a traitor, and she got beat in front of us for replying back. After 2 weeks, they transferred us to a Dabito prison near Asmara. The main reason I wanted to leave was because after a year I would have to go to Sawa for military training, and I had seen many of my friends come out from Sawa sick, and I had heard how bad the conditions were in Sawa. And I know once you get to Sawa, it means the end of your life. You'd either be a soldier or at best a teacher, and teachers get paid a PT 145 nakba, which you can't make your living out of. Therefore, I wanted to leave because I didn't want to go to Sawa and to get a better education elsewhere. But unfortunately, I was caught. Some of those who were arrested with me were smugglers. Of those who departed with me, 2 had just returned from military training in Sawa, and 3 were teachers. One of them was ill and was going to Sudan for medication. She had asked to be allowed to leave for medical reasons many times, but she was prevented. And finally, she decided to leave illegally. We were taken to a Davido prison by a lorry accompanied by security guards. In a Davido prison, they separated those who were interrogated from those who were not, and they moved us into a small compartment within the prison and locked us inside. There were around 60 of us. We lit a fire. They gave us food, but the food wasn't edible and we couldn't eat it. But food was allowed from outside relatives and families. The food they gave us was lentils and dry bread made from sorghum. We were 60 in a very small room. The sanitary conditions were very bad, and there were insects and pests everywhere. We were only allowed to go to the toilet twice a day. You cannot wash your clothes or even your body. And if you feel sick, you miss the toilet hours. You were given tea on a used jug. Since we were women, we were given more time during toilet hours, so we'd wash in hiding. But for the boys, it was worse. They were heavily watched, and if they tried to run away, they would shoot at them. They were made to walk on barefoot when they go to the toilet, and they were made to pee on heaps of garbage. They give them less than 2 minutes. The sanitary conditions in their hall was very bad, and the food they were given was much worse, so it was generally worse for them. In our compartment, we were 60, and there were children of the women who were arrested with us. There were also all women who were over the age of 50. Some of them had been in the prison over a year and two. They were interrogated often. Even though they had been in the prison for years, they were still being interrogated, and they were not sentenced. How was the interrogation? They did beat them. For me, it was less harsh because I was underage. They threatened to beat me and asked me questions. When I went into the interrogation room, I heard boys getting beat and screaming. The police interrogator was asking me if my family knew and threatening to beat me if I don't speak the truth. But I was advised by my inmates that they would threaten me but cannot beat me because I was underage. So I kept telling them no one from my family knew, except my dad. The head of the prison would come and visit us, and the woman would cry and beg to let them free. They say I've been here for years. I left my children, and there's no one taking care of them. But no one was coming out except in. They switch the lights off at 6, and we can't sleep because of the insects and pests. Were there any sick women amongst you? Yes, there were. They were treated like us. For example, if you have diarrhea, they don't let you out. So you have to use empty jugs and plastic bags. We couldn't eat the food that we were getting from the outside. So as a result, many people were getting diarrhea. Even the toilet that we were using was very unsanitary. So at times, we would prefer not to use it. We were not allowed to wash our clothes. For the boys, they would come at night, pour water over them, and torture them. They were not allowed to wear shoes at all times. I stayed there for 2 weeks. Did your family know you were at the prison, or were they able to visit you? My mom and my uncle visited me 2-3 times, but we were not allowed to see each other. But they would pass on the food they brought me. Because I was still being interrogated, I was not allowed to see them. There were around 200 women, but I cannot give you the exact number for the men in the prison, because there were many of them. They could easily be thousands. In one hall, there were around 1,000, and there were lots of others who were arrested, accused of smuggling and accompanying escapees. There were around 2,000 to 3,000. Adavito prison is very big, and there were a lot of prisoners there. Did anyone die? I heard there were people who died, who became mentally unstable, especially women. They would send them to their families and order them to return once they recover. I know a lot of women, even my former schoolmates, who tried to cross the border before I did. and were in the prison for a year. There were two sisters, one of them who was mentally unstable. There were many like her. Many of the boys who were arrested accused of evading draft. Those who attempted to cross the border were in a different section of the prison. When I was caught, I was immediately sent to prison and transferred from prison to prison and interrogated there. Some were released after months, and some in a year or two. There is no access to law or the court. For me, because I was underage, I was told I would be released if I pay 50,000 nakfa. So I paid 50,000 nakfa and I was released. The amount of sentence varies depending on the severity of the crime. For example, the smugglers were treated much worse and they were arrested for up to 6 years, while the draft evaders are generally arrested for a year or two. But those who are arrested for attempting to cross the border, if you are a first-time offender, you are arrested for 2 years. But if it's for your second time, for 3-4 years. But those people who attempt to cross the border repetitively, they are arrested for much longer. Do you know the names of your interrogators? The person who was interrogating me, his name was Towalde, short, dark-colored, and his assistant who was threatening to beat me was Wade Ali. He was short and light-colored. After I was released from Diabeto, I went back to school, but I didn't like it. And a year later, I successfully crossed the border to Ethiopia. Because life is very difficult in Eritrea, and the education prospects are not great, people attempt to cross the border several times, even if they are caught once. Because even if I stayed, I'd go to Sawa. I would be scared of getting arrested again, so you just try to cross the border until you succeed. Because it's all the same, you're going to be a soldier anyway. I was really scared when I was attempting to cross this for the second time. I was ecstatic when I reached to Ethiopia, and shortly after I arrived in Ethiopia, I came to Boston.